For many people, work is considered a safe place to be. But for the individuals in this video, work quickly became a nightmare. Windsor is a small, quiet town located in Bertie County in northeastern North Carolina with a population of no more than 3,000 people. On a warm spring Sunday in June 1993, at around 6 p.m., while the local citizens were winding down from the day to prepare for a new week, the Below grocery store had just closed down for the evening. Inside the store remained the scheduled store employees, 47-year-old store manager of 8 months, Grover Lee Cecile Jr., aka Bud, and Joyce Reason, a 36-year-old cashier. The store had closed earlier than normal that day and had extra help called in to assist them with stripping the floor. The cleaning crew members consisted of Johnny Rankins Jr., Thomas E. Hardy, Sylvester Welch, and Jasper Hardy. Little did the Below staff know, locked inside the store with them was a cold-blooded monster. The stranger hid in the store before closing time, waited until all customers were out and no one could enter the store. At around 6:15 p.m., the man emerged from hiding with a gun and proceeded to gather up the store staff. As reported, after the man integrated the employees and crew to the back butcher room of the store, he allegedly duct taped them together in twos and tied them up with dog leashes from a shelf. He then stacked the pairs into 3 piles, with the intention of shooting through the stacks to save ammo. The attacker told the workers that he was a former police officer who had just been fired and had nothing to lose. The man then fired his gun into the stacks until he ran out of bullets. Shortly after, he grabbed a butcher knife and began to slash the victims. He stabbed so hard that he broke the knife into Welch's back. After the shootings, he placed the 6 people back on the floor, face down, in a puddle of blood. Jasper Hardy Jr. was the only person that wasn't hurt on that gruesome day. He was placed on the bottom of a stack, but felt the trauma when the bullet struck the man on top of him. The gunman told Jasper he was going to let him live. It is believed that the killer took $3,000 and the store keys and slipped out without ever being seen again. He left without making sure all of his victims were dead. Welch managed to get free from the duct tape that was drenched in blood and crawled across the store to a phone to dial 911, leaving a bloody trail. Joyce Reason, Grover Lee Cecile Jr., and cleaning crew member Johnny Rankins all succumbed to their injuries. Thomas E. Hardy and Sylvester Welch were in critical condition and hospitalized. Jasper Hardy Jr. was left unharmed. The killer was described as an African-American male between the ages of 30 to 35 with a slender-built body and a military-style haircut. He had slanted light brown eyes with a narrow nose bridge that looked as if it was caused by a sports injury. This incident left Windsor with so many questions and scary nights. The case still remains unsolved today. Right after midnight, on November 17, 1978, a teenager pulled up to his job at Burger Chef in Speedway, Indiana, to pay them a visit and to assist if needed. He figured his co-workers were still inside cleaning up after the shift, since all of the lights were still on. As he walked up to the door, he realized the door was left open, which was not normal. As he entered the store, he realized the store was vacant, and the cash register drawers were all on the floor. Now, if you don't know what Burger Chef is, it was a popular fast food restaurant in America that was similar to McDonald's or Burger King. It began in 1954 and it was very popular in like the 1970s, early 1970s, with over 1,000 locations in America and some in Canada. Jane Freed, 16-year-old Daniel Davis, 16-year-old Mark Flemings, and 18-year-old Ruth Ellen Shelton, and they were nowhere to be found, so the co-worker called the police. The store manager reported a loss of $581, and initially the case was not taken seriously, as the police thought that the kids just went out for a joyride and taken the money themselves. The girls' purses were still left in the restaurant along with some of their coats, but the police still went with the petty theft theory and allowed the store to be open and cleaned the next day. If there was any evidence left, it was gone, and no photos were taken of the scene. When the four did not show up to work that following Saturday, and reports of them not arriving home Friday night, and also finding Jane's car in an abandoned place, they started to suspect that something was wrong. It had become evident that they were taken during closing time and taken out the trash. Late Sunday afternoon, an elderly couple taking a hike in Johnson County called to report that they found 4 deceased bodies while walking through their wooded property. The location they were later found at was about 35 minutes away from Burger Chef. Both Ruth and Daniel had been shot multiple times, laying side by side. Jane had been stabbed twice in the chest with a hunting knife, whose handle was broken off and once missing but reported later found. Mark Flemings was found about 75 yards away from the others. He had been beaten and believed to have ran into a tree, knocking himself out. He had choked on his own blood after being beaten with possibly a chain. Their money and watches were still found on them, and they were all still wearing their uniforms. The main theory surrounding the case was that the 4 were kidnapped after a botched robbery and one of the victims recognized the attackers. Allegedly, Flemings was covering someone's shift and not scheduled to work that night, so investigators speculated that he may have recognized the killers since they had not planned on him being there. There was a 16-year-old eyewitness that night who saw 2 suspicious men in a car outside of the restaurant before closing time. The men were described as both being white and in their 30s. One had a beard, while the other was clean-shaved with fair-colored hair. While following up on leads in Franklin, Indiana, officers spotted a man who had a strong resemblance to the man with the beard that the witness saw the night of the murders. They summoned him for a lineup, and the night before having to appear for the lineup, the man shaved his beard of 5 years, which made him unrecognizable. But without confessions and physical evidence of the involvement of the suspect, the police were unable to make an arrest. During that time, there was speculation that the murders were tied to other crimes that startled the town in the months leading up, such as the murder of Julia Skyfers and the Speedway bombings, which were a series of 8 random bombings occurring September 1st through September 6, 1978. These cases were later found to be unrelated. Investigators continued to follow leads relating to the possible suspects. However, they were not able to find any more promising leads, nor locate any evidence they believed to be useful. No confessions were made by the perpetrators to the police. The son of the man with the beard told police that before his dad died, that he confessed to him that he was involved in the murders. The other 2 suspects died of an apparent suicide and one of a heart attack. In 1984, an inmate by the name of Donald Forrester, who was sentenced to 95 years, said that he was involved in the murders and was willing to confess in order to avoid his scheduled transfer to a notoriously violent prison in Indiana. Donald confessed to shooting Daniel and Ruth. He then led the police to the crime scene in the woods, accurately describing the location and position the bodies were when they were found. He also knew about the broken handle of the knife, which was not publicly stated or publicly known. According to Donald, Jane's brother owed money on a drug deal, so he and 3 other associates went to the restaurant to threaten her. A fight broke out when Mark intervened to protect her. During the fight, Mark fell and hit his head on the bumper of a car. Donald and his friends believed that Mark was dead or was dying, so they decided to kidnap and kill all of the staff to eliminate any witnesses. Donald claimed to have shot Ruth and Daniel and gave the names to the 3 men responsible of killing Mark and Jane. He later led police to the spot where he said to have thrown the gun in the river. However, the weapon was not found. Donald's ex-wife was interviewed and said that he drove her to a wooded area days after the murders. He left her in the car and got out to get the casings off the ground from the gun. He then drove all the way back home and flushed the casings down the toilet. The detective that was working on the case received a warrant to search the septic tank of the house that was now owned by someone else. Within the search, they turned up several caliber shell casings. Donald suddenly took back his confession, claiming it was fake after someone within the sheriff's office leaked details of his cooperation. With no further cooperation from Donald and no more evidence proving he committed the crime, he was never charged. He later died in prison from cancer in 2006. Despite all of this, as well as Burger Chef offering a reward of $25,000, the case still remains unsolved